Yeah, welcome everyone. Yeah, we're just going to go over the game from today between Magnus Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana. The usual suspects playing in the World Chess Championship here. And this was round 9. Magnus has the white pieces. And with the match getting so close to the conclusion of the classical portion, that is 12 games in total, it's really important for these players to try to push some advantage, because especially for Magnus, I personally think it's very worrying the more you get to the end of this match that you're giving Fabiano Caruana the final game of the match, that is game 12, with the white pieces. I think that is something that Team CARLSEN is very conscious of and needs to be very careful of. Now there's only 3 games left after this game, and he's got to put up with a couple of Fabiano's white pieces. So we'll get into this game. Round 9, this one started off very similar to what we've seen in a previous round. And these guys have shown throughout this match that they're very okay repeating entire lines. So they'll play the exact same moves, 5 moves, 6, 7, 8, like tons of moves in the opening that are identical, and just change one move. That will be the preparation, the novelty, the improvement, whatever it might be. And these guys have shown that they're willing to go into the exact same lines. They're not trying to innovate too many different openings. They've done some experimenting in the beginning of the match. They identified sort of where they want to try for a push. And this position, for those that remember the match, has already been seen before. We'll go right up to here. We're 8 moves in. This is the exact position we've had before. The last time we saw bishop d2 was the choice from Magnus. We saw knight takes knight, bishop takes, knight to d4, b4 by Magnus, and bishop to b6. So we had this position, and it ended up, of course, being a draw the last time they played. Magnus this time decided to go for the same line, except he played bishop g5. The thing about bishop g5 is you might think that the move f6 goes, gains a free tempo. A lot of people like this idea of a free tempo. If I'm attacking your piece and you have to move it again, no matter what my move was, it's a free tempo. Not always the case. I mean, why on earth would we play a move like bishop g5 if this move f6 can be played so simply? And the reason is that just because you make a move that attacks my piece that I have to move again, you have to look at whether that move actually benefits your position. And in this case, White's making the argument, Magnus is making the argument that f6 is actually a detriment to the position. It opens this diagonal to the king on g8, and it could actually, that diagonal, the weakness there on the light squares, could actually be bad for Fabiano with some resulting tactics. So yeah, bishop g5 was played to actually encourage the move f6, and it wasn't played by Fabiano. So what does that tell you? Not every move is just so simple, gaining a tempo. After f6, there's a few moves that can be considered, but one of them that looked pretty good was the move queen b3, which hits the knight on d5. For example, bishop e6 to defend. There'd be a move like queen takes b7, and no matter what black does here, like knight a5, there's queen b5. Even knight b4, there's queen b5, and of course we're hitting the knight right now. So it's just, you can't really take that bishop without losing another piece of your own, and it seemed like that's exactly what Magnus was intending after f6. So instead, after bishop g5, what we saw was knight takes c3, hitting the queen. So Fabiano replies with a threat of his own. B takes c3. Now f6, because after queen b3, black could play potentially king h8 if he doesn't want to go for this line right here, and then white would have to move the bishop after. And Magnus plays this move bishop c1, which, I mean, a lot of moves Magnus has done so far probably don't make make a sense. Probably don't make a sense. It don't make a sense to the chat, Jaron. You know, it don't make a sense. Bishop c1, it don't make a sense because you play bishop g5, you lose a move, and then you put your bishop back on c1. You're like, what kind of world champion? Who is this guy? Who's man? Someone come get their grandfather because he's out here wilding. Bishop g5, giving up a free tempo, and then putting the bishop back on c1. It's like, what is this? So the idea, he wants the pawn on f6, he wants this weakened diagonal, it's going to benefit him in the long run, and then he wants to put this bishop on b2 and go for the move d4. That way he's got a very strong bishop on g2, attacking the center, and then the bishop on b2 supports the pawn breaks, supports the central advance, and he's trying to say that black's position is not set up to defend that. So bishop e6, bishop b2, black's just developing. I mean, the thing that I always say is when you get into these middle game positions and you start to prefer one side or the other, I might say, wow, okay, I like Magnus's position. He's got a very easy push in the center with d4. And, you know, wait a minute, I have to think about it from Fabi's perspective. What has he done wrong? That's what you have to ask yourself sometimes. Like, what moves has Fabiano made that are clearly, you know, subpar in this game? Almost none of them. He's played very naturally. It's crazy to think that bishop g5, bishop c1 is like the refutation of this line. So it's almost reassuring whenever you're in a position like this, you just, you know, calm down and say, wait a minute, I've done nothing wrong. My pieces are all normally placed. You know, bishop b6, queen d7, rook d8. There's nothing too wrong with my position. However, in a couple moves, I think that Magnus managed to get a little something. So d4 was played. This move was unstoppable. There's just no way that you could prevent d4. You didn't have any other... Queen wasn't on d7, so you couldn't add any more pressure. But the reason that you play the bishop back to b6 is so that your bishop isn't attacked after the move d4. And that does make a difference in a lot of lines. So bishop, I'll just give an example. Let's say we started with bishop d5, right? Let's say we played Fabiano's move instead of playing bishop back. Well, then what would happen is I would play something like e4, hitting the bishop. You have to move the bishop again. Now I play the move d4, hitting this bishop. Okay, you can take, doesn't matter. Now I play the move d5. Now obviously I'm making some blunders here, but the point is to show you that you'd actually like to use prophylaxis. You'd like to do this ahead of time. By moving the bishop back first, now the move e4, well, quite simply, the pawn is under attack. I could play bishop g4 if I wanted to pin the knight and stop the move d4 altogether. So it gives me more options. My pieces aren't being attacked with tempo, and if d4 happens, then I can play bishop d5, and the move e4 doesn't happen. So that's kind of important just in terms of move order there, making sure to play bishop b6 first. So he does do that, and essentially I want to get to the position which was most critical in the game. So after queen c2, very simple threat, e4, we saw an exchange, bishop e4, queen b3. Here, I thought that a pretty reasonable move was queen to d5, and the idea being that, you know, if you capture and play e3, or if you just play e3 straight away, let's say here e3, no matter what, you're going to get this solid structure. And keep in mind, this is not a problem because the queen is actually pinned to the king by this queen, so you can't go grab my bishop. But anyways, a position like this seems to me like the reason I'm comfortable with black here is I want to park a knight on d5 and say that this bishop is pinning the knight to white's bishop. So the only way to make progress in this position is to move the knight, and then we get a bishop trade. It's very good for Fabi. So something like knight here, and you know, even if you play a move like this, might be able to take, play a move like f5, c6. I don't see how black could be that much worse here. I definitely prefer white's position probably just because of the pawns in the center, but black has pretty good control of the light squares here. So I thought this was a pretty reasonable way to play for Fabi. But what he did instead was he played bishop d5. So forces the queen to move again. I'm sure everyone in chat was like, yeah, queen c2, gonna be another draw. But no, Magnus is more ambitious than that, especially this early on in the match. Not in the overall World Championship match, but I should say early on in this game, rather. So he plays queen d1. He plays queen d1. He guards the pawn on e2. That was a discovered attack. Bishop d5, multi-purpose. And bishop takes f3 was a move that Fabiano spent a long time on. He's not happy to play that move, but what he didn't like was that white just plays e3 and chills. He just chills. That's the most annoying thing. What can you do with black? We were analyzing this position and it's just, there's no pawn breaks. Let's play queen d7. Let's play rook d8. It's like, what do you do here? There's no f4 move. c5 is a pretty risky move to arrange, and even still, it's not so simple. And on top of that, white has the long-term plan of potentially trying to play e4. So everything nicely protected. He owns the center entirely, so it looks like it's white is for choice here. And Fabiano agreed with that notion so seriously that in this position, he actually took the knight on f3, gave up the two bishops. He gave away the light square bishop. And after playing f6, remember we were all laughing at that move. We're laughing at the world champion. Now take a look at f6. The diagonal and the light squares, you really start to feel the effect of that move. Once we go for this forced line, again, just a couple reasons, like bishop takes d4, we just have rook d1, and this pin is just something you can't get out of. You have e3, we also have bishop takes c6, winning a bishop. If you play knight takes d4, bishop takes, get ready, rook d1 once again, and no matter what you do, I'm going to play e3 next move and just take that bishop, because it's a nasty pin we're in there. So in this case, this was all pretty much forced. Queen takes d4, e3, queen e5, bishop takes pawn, and rook d8 was played. If rook b8, trying to set something up on the queen, then we can move our bishop back. And if bishop d4, saying, hey, discovered attack, dude, pay attention. No, e takes d4, hitting the black queen as well, winning a piece for white. Bishop takes e3, another discovered attack. Actually, queen takes e3, and once again, there's no way to win material here. You're just down a bishop. So feels bad. Nothing to do there for Fabiano, which is why he played rook d8, rook d1, queen e7. And this, we take a pause here. Move 23. The dust has settled. This position, one thing to remember is that it will never be equal until the game is just over. Even when you draw the game, you might be drawing from a position where white is slightly better. So what that does is, because there's no forced way to equalize, there's no forced lines here. There's no tactics. What it is just a slightly better position for white. I can play h4, h5, king g2. I can slow play the heck out of this position, bishop d5. And because of this, the king in the corner, the presence of the major pieces, I have a lot of space to maneuver and really play a long game here. So it's really the fact that there's no forcing lines, there's no direct threat, and therefore there's no way to ever fully equalize, because it's not something I can just calculate my way out of. If you start calculating here as black, you actually get low on time, which is what happened to Fabiano. He got very low on time on this game, and I thought that actually might be one of the reasons for him potentially messing up. As you get low on time, you get uncomfortable, bad things happen. Bad things happen to good people. h4 was played. We can demonstrate with a move like h6, just how bad things are going to be on this diagonal. If I ever get this bishop to this diagonal and sort of work my queen in front of the bishop, that checkmate threat, you can't block it with any of the pawns, which is why it's black. And just as a general rule, when you're making an escape square for the king, you always want to make it on the escape square that is the opposite color of your opponent's bishop. Just a good rule. Good rule of thumb. So he did just that. Fabiano, he knows my rule of thumb. h5 was played. Why was h5 played? I thought that h5 may have been played by black, but usually the move h5 is played is because if you take it, all of a sudden these pawns look terrible. They're all isolated. Even the h-pawns are doubled and isolated. And the move g5 again weakens this diagonal. So Magnus is just trying to pry open some lines to the king. I think that he underestimated g takes h5. Why is that? Black's threatening h4. You might be saying, okay, listen, Hambleton. What are you talking about, dude? You're not even 2,500. You make no sense. Now, the reason I say that after just winning a pawn, that my intention is to give it right back is not because we're getting close to Christmas. It's not because I'm growing a beard and I've got the dad bod and I'm starting to look more like Santa Claus and I might dye my hair white. No, it's not because I'm giving you a gift back. It's because I want to damage your pawn structure so that I actually get a rook to g8 and suddenly your king feels as endangered as my king on h8. So I want to ruin your pawn structure. I don't want to let you play king g2, rook h1, rook takes h5. That would be a disaster for Fabiano. That's how you get checkmated. That's where the opposite bishops come into effect, because this bishop here, keep in mind the whole game, it's just staring at this pawn structure. Unless you can sacrifice, this guy's basically not moving. It's a non-participant. So it's important that you understand that h4 is a pretty serious threat. Now, who understands that? Magnus plays queen c4. Looks like a great move. However, I will say an even better counter was played f5, and now there didn't seem to be any way to stop h4. King g2, I'm just one move too slow. I'll just demonstrate. Rook f8. Well, now rook h1. I'm attacking this pawn. You know, you can defend it with a move like queen g5. I might take this, play something like, I don't know, queen f7, hitting this pawn. All of a sudden, you know, every single one of these pawns is weak, it's falling, the bishop can swing around. This is the type of position you do not want to be in. Bishop f3 would have also been a fantastic move there as well. No, this is not what you want. This is not what you want. So it means in a position like this that I don't know if I want to use the word miscalculated, but maybe misevaluated how strong the move f5 was. Threatening h4, threatening to put the queen on f6, which is the operative square. It cuts off this diagonal for checks against the king, supports h4, guards d8 because that's the open file where we might trade a bunch of rooks, and you know, even protects the f5 pawn. So queen f6 is simply the best square on the board, and black is about to get his queen there. Bishop f3, h4, very good move. No matter what, no matter how you take this pawn back, black is going to get a position where white doesn't have these three pawns connected, and black is sort of forcing white to create another pawn island of his own. Not something he wants. Rook d8, some trades came in. White's forced to take this pawn back. Probably the last really critical move was g4. Boy, this looked interesting, but also a little bit scary. You're down a pawn here as white. You know, how badly do you need this win is the real question, because you are walking into some pins here. Black, you know, he's not that much worse in terms of position. He's going to have the isolated h-pawn anyway. So all you're doing is you're trying to say that these two connected pawns are worth these three pawns right here. And I'm just not sure that's the case. Again, this is a position where g4 may have been the move to try to make something happen for Magnus. Maybe that's the last try to push the win. I'm not sure what the evaluation is. We never use engines here, but g4 looked extremely interesting. It's just also comes with risk. And I can tell you that the theme of this match has been players are getting advantages, but when they have those advantages, they are not ever taking a risk in order to push it. That's I think the theme. And it's kind of important to realize that, because it helps you predict what moves these guys might play. We're not going to see g4 because it involves some risk, and what he chose instead was something with no risk. He just took the pawn back after exchanging some rooks, and after rook g8, king h1, black's queen reaches the ideal square, and now even black's bishop joins the action with bishop c5. Bishop d6 is coming, that pawn is still hit. You can't move the bishop because rook g4 is always on the cards. So after rook g1, we enter an opposite bishop endgame. Queens are still on the board, but no, this is headed to a draw, and you know, things started to really clear up here. More obvious moves for Fabiano, and the rest of the game is not really worth spending too much time on, because the players are just trading pawns, 2 pawns apiece, opposite bishop endgame. And I'll just show you the rest of the moves here as we reach a drawn opposite bishop endgame. And the final thing to look at is, let's say, worst case scenario for Magnus. He's worried about losing in some possible way. Let's even go king d5. h5 can be played, because if you take, you go take that. Bishop h3. bishop here, king b7. You can't play c5 because your bishop's hanging. You might get concerned. Okay, I'll play h4. And if white tries to win this with a7, we can take it and play c5. And after c5, actually, it's white who's actually losing this, I think. Here, bishop's on h3. And I actually get one of these pawns to queen before the white king can get back in time. So obviously this is not going to happen, but that just goes to show what happens if you even try to win that position, which explains why it's a dead draw and why the players agreed to a draw after a few more moves and shuffling around the board. Magnus brought his king all the way down there and realized there was nothing to do. So he brought the king back and the players agreed to a draw right here. So that's 56 moves. That's round 9 in the bag here. There is going to be a Fabiano with the white pieces tomorrow, but this was the current world champion, Magnus Carlsen, pushing with white, but in my opinion, just not risking it when he maybe had the chance. I think h5 was a little hasty. He really underestimated g takes h5, followed by h4, which I think was a critical point of this game, getting rid of that double pawn, ruining Magnus's pawn structure in front of his king, and that actually was something I think Magnus underestimated yet again in this game. And also the theme of the players getting small advantages but not willing to risk anything to push them. And maybe we'll see that change as the match goes on, as we get closer and closer to the rapid portion. Maybe we won't see that change, you know, it just stays true the whole match, even in the tie breaks. But this is shaping up to be a pretty exciting finish. You can talk about 9 draws all you want, but the games are going to be so high pressure now that there's almost no chance to come back from a loss this late into a match. And Fabiano actually has 2 of the remaining 3 games with the white pieces. So in the classical portion, Fabiano is neutralizing Magnus. He has more whites left in the remainder of this match, and it seems like you have to favor him just in the way the match is going. The momentum seems to be in Fabiano's favor, but neither of these players could find any difference between them so far. So that's round 9. The official result for today was a draw.